Morning. So thanks for joining us for our ANZAC Day special service here. As I was saying to the kids, it really is important to honor the people who have served for our country. I think that we don't often appreciate the sacrifice that's given by the people who do survive. We just came off of an Easter service, and a very common Christian message for Easter is that we appreciate that Jesus came and sacrificed his life. He died on the cross, and we're honoring that sacrifice. But I've mentioned this before. I didn't do it this year, but a new church way of Easter is actually honoring the life Jesus led, not the death. I mean, we honor the death too, for sure, but we really take the effort to honor the daily perfection. Because, let's face it, it's a lot easier to take a bullet for somebody, to stand in front of a bullet to save somebody's life, than it is to be perfect day in and day out, to be kind to people who aren't nice to you, to be patient with people who aren't kind to you, to be loving all the people who don't love you. That's a very, very difficult task, living that life. The one act of sacrifice we see as almost a glamorous martyrdom, but it's the daily perfection that's hard. And so with this service, I kind of want to take that angle of saying, well, let's honor the people who have served in wars for us and not died, because they've given a massive sacrifice of themselves. These people, they go off to war and they don't come back the same. They've seen things they can't unsee. There are things in that book I just read with the kids, some scenes that are described that are just horrific, that a 10-year-old sees. I spent some time this week looking around for videos to show the kids from different war movies, but they're just too graphic for the group we have here. It's too much for kids that are that age. But it's the horror of war, and you can't unsee it. So that's the point for today, is to spend some time honoring those who have served and survived, and honor the sacrifice that they've given from the things that they've had to see and endure. I came across this story about a man named William Manchester, and he's a World War II veteran. And the story goes like this. I'm going to read it for you, but the setup is he's describing an assault on a sniper who was in a fishing shack and was picking off various Marines in his company. It says, Manchester was terrified by fear, but he broke into the shack and found himself in an empty room. There was a door to another room he also broke down, but he feared in doing so the sniper would kill him. But it turned out the sniper was in a sniper harness, so he could not turn around fast enough. He was entangled in the harness, so I shot him with my .45, and I felt remorse and shame. I can remember myself whispering foolishly, I'm sorry, and then just throwing up. I threw up all over myself. It was a betrayal of what I'd been taught since I was a child. The horrors of war aren't just the sacrifice of money and convenience. Here's a guy who did what was right in the wartime situation. It was kill or be killed. He was fighting the enemy. He knows this. He does it. But he still feels this sense of betrayal for everything that he's been taught. Be kind to others. Love your enemies. All this doctrine that we teach every Sunday. And yet, he still can't cope with it. This is the kind of thing that is unfortunately a common story. There's a huge human toll. The memories, they don't go away, and they have to live with them the rest of their life. And nowadays, you hear of stories in the news where a soldier has been diagnosed with PTSD, post-traumatic syndrome disorder. And they try to treat it. They try to, therapies and drugs and all this stuff. But the fact of the matter is, we have more soldiers taking their own life after the war due to PTSD than ever before. World War II soldiers somehow could do this. Even the Vietnam soldiers had their ways of coping. But what they're going through now in the Middle East, they come back and they take their own life after they've survived because the horror has been so bad. The guilt, the shame, all those things, it's still with them. And it's tough. It's tough. There's not much we can do, which is why it's important for us to make sure we honor them for their service and support them when they come back, when they get medals and things, to say, yes, you took that life, but you had to do it. You're not to be blamed for that. When we look to the teachings for the new church, there are some comforting passages that say, that people like Manchester and others shouldn't feel bad about the service they've given, even though they do. Doctrine of charity. Here's what it says here. It says, charity in the case of the common soldier. It's in your order of service if you want to follow along. It says, if he, the soldier, looks to the Lord and shuns evils as sins, and does his duty honestly, justly, and faithfully, he also becomes a charity, there being in this respect no distinction of persons. For he is averse to unjust plunderings, he detests unjust bloodshed. In battle it is another thing, then he is not averse to it, for then he does not think of it, but of the enemy as an enemy who desires his blood. His fury dies away when he hears the sound of the drum calling him, and to cease from the slaughter. That sounds okay. He's adverse to unjust plunderings. Okay, great. But in battle it's another thing. He's not averse to it, for then he does not think of it. That's not the experience Manchester describes. It's hard to make that switch from soldier to a normal person. His fury dies away when he hears the sound of the drum calling to cease from the slaughter. The fury might die away, but other things don't. All the other emotions that go with it don't go away quickly. And so we have the comfort of, this is what a soldier should be like, and this is what charity in the common soldier is. But we don't always appreciate how hard it is to come back from that. After victory, he looks upon the prisoners as the neighbor according to the quality of their good. Before battle, he raises his mind to the Lord and commends his life into his hand. And after having done this, he brings his mind down again from its elevation into the body and becomes brave. And while in his mind above his bravery, the thought of the Lord continues to abide, though he is not even then aware of it. And then if he dies in the Lord. If he lives in the Lord. I think it's a comforting teaching, but it's just really hard to switch back and forth. Think about your life. How many people are sitting here and they have guilt or shame or some sort of remorse over something they did 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago? Pretty sure everybody sits in that same boat of saying, yep, I have guilt over something I did. And it's probably something not nearly as severe as taking another person's life. You treated somebody bad in high school. You weren't nice to somebody at an event. These things happen. We feel bad about them. But boy, it's really easy to forgive a lot of those things. But these guys are having to deal with the fact that they were up close and personal and they took somebody's life. Somebody who they reflect on it. This is somebody's son. This is somebody's father. This is somebody's son. So it's hard to get back and forth to that. Even though it's necessary, it's part of combat, it's hard to do that. It's hard to go back and forth. We don't often see and hear about the humanity of war. We hear about the brutality of war. But there are humans involved in these conflicts. And as a result, there's a human price to be paid. They're doing their job. They sign up for these things all the time. It's voluntary service in the Western world. And yet there are all these horrors that they endure in the name of service. when I was looking through stories in my mind about the Bible, it's like, all right, where do we see Bible wars? Well, everywhere. There are wars all throughout the Scripture. They're easy to find. But there aren't many that deal with this humanity side of things. Oh, there's plenty of times where the Israelites say, oh, well, these are the bad guys. We're going to go beat them and take them over. Oh, the Philistines attack. Oh, we're going to repel their attack. But it's usually higher level stories where we don't get the humanity, the one-on-one interaction of how it affects people. But I did come up with one. There's a story from 2 Samuel chapter 2. And this is after King Saul has died, and there is this civil war erupting in the land of Israel. Because who's going to be king after Saul? Is it going to be Saul's son, or is it going to be David? David who's won all the battles against the Philistines. So there's division. David's from the south, from the Judah side of things. So the people from Judah want David to be king. The people on the north want Saul's son to be king, because look, why is a guy from Judah going to care about us? So there's this conflict. And in this conflict, you have the two commanders. We have the commander Abner, who's the northern commander, and the commander Joab from the south. And that's where we're going to pick up our little story. So there was a very fierce battle that day. And Abner and the men of Israel were beaten before the servants of David. Now the three sons of Zeruiah were these: Joab, so the commander of the south, Joab, and Abishai, and Asahel. And Asahel was as fleet on foot as a wild gazelle. So Asahel pursued Abner, commander of the north, and in going he did not turn to the right hand or to the left from following Abner. Then Abner looked behind him and said, "Are you Asahel?" He answered, "I am." And Abner said to him, "Turn aside to your right hand or to your left. Lay hold on one of the young men and take his armor for yourself." But Asahel would not turn aside from following him. So Abner said to him again, "Turn aside from following me. Why should I strike you to the ground? How could I then face your brother Joab?" However, he refused to turn aside. Therefore Abner struck him in the stomach with the blunt end of the spear. So that spear came out of his back, and he fell down there and died on the spot. So it was that as many as came to the place where Asahel fell down and died stood still. Joab and Abishai also pursued Abner. The sun was going down when they came to the hill of Ammah, which is before Giah by the road to the wilderness of Gibeon. Now the children of Benjamin gathered together behind Abner and became a unit, and they took their stand on top of the hill. Then Abner called Joab and said, "Shall the sword devour forever? Do you not know that it will be bitter in the latter end? How long will it be then until you tell the people to return from pursuing their brethren?" This is a civil war. Stop. Why are we fighting? And Joab said, "As God lives, unless you had spoken, surely then by morning all the people would have given up pursuing their brethren." So Joab blew a trumpet, and all the people stood still and did not pursue Israel anymore, nor did they fight anymore. Yeah, that interaction between Asahel and Abner, to me, is just really powerful when you think of, the depth of what's going on there. He's the commander, he's running away, he's being pursued by somebody who's faster. He's like, "Look, don't make me kill you. Don't make me do it. How am I going to face your brother? Your brother who is, in a larger sense, family, who's the opposing commander of the army." And they had a prior connection from serving both for the king. So that they had this familiarity. Don't make me do this. He does. And then Abner pursues again, says to the Joab, "Can't we stop this? This is crazy." Joab comes down. And to me, it's just showing how hard it is to, again, switch from being civilized human being to soldier to civilized human being. It's not easy. It's not easy. And I keep repeating myself, but it's important that we remember this and that we honor the fact that these people have given this for us. This story, while it teaches how hard it is to make that switch, it also shows that some people can do it. He tries, and he succeeds. Joab doesn't. The story continues, and Joab is so furious that Abner has killed his brother, he does a sneak attack and kills Abner. David later finds out about this and says, wait a second, this was completely wrong. I did not sanction this, and he makes this big apology about how he was not responsible for Abner's death. But it's showing you that while Abner could switch back and forth between civilized human being and soldier, Joab couldn't. Joab couldn't do that. He couldn't escape the revenge, the murder. The stench of war just stuck with Joab. It stayed around. There are times we do have to fight, but it has these consequences. I'm going to read you this passage from True Christianity because it does tell us that loving our country is important. So yeah, there are times when these soldiers do have to fight. It's an important thing to love our country. It's just sometimes there's a big toll that comes with it. So this is from True Christianity 4:14. It says, our country is our neighbor more than our community is, because our country consists of many communities. Love for our country is therefore broader and higher. Loving our country is also loving the well-being of the general public. Our country is our neighbor because it's like a parent. We are born into it. It has nourished us and continues to nourish us. It has kept us safe from harm and continues to do so. We are to do good to our country with love according to what it needs. Some of its needs are earthly and some of it are spiritual. Its earthly needs center on civic life and order. Its spiritual needs center on its spiritual life and order. We are to love our country not merely as much as we love ourselves, we are to love it more. There is a law written on the human heart that gives rise to the statement that all just people say when they are in imminent danger of dying because of an enemy or some other cause. They say it is a noble thing to die for their country. They say it is a glorious thing for soldiers to shed their blood for their country. They say this because it is how much one ought to love one's country. It's important to know that if people love their country and benefit, they wish it well, and they love the Lord's kingdom after death. The Lord's kingdom is their country at that point, and those who love the Lord's kingdom love the Lord, since the Lord is in everything to all his kingdom. So we are to love our country. And yes, there are some who think it's glorious to die for the country. But when these people go to war and they survive and they come back, sometimes we forget that they've done something pretty big too. We don't always account for their difficulty in assimilating. I'm going to leave you with one final story here. It's about a man named Roger. Roger served in Vietnam. And it's an encounter between him and a woman who was a World War II survivor. And it's one of the things I've read when researching for this week was the importance of seeing these veterans get medals and recognition and some sort of support for the service that they've given, because it helps them assimilate back into normal society. It helps them feel, it eases the guilt, eases the burden for what they've seen and what they've been through and the things that they've done. And when I read this story, you'll kind of catch that, this is what they need, and this is what they're struggling with. And this is what I'm going to finish with. So here's the vet named Roger, and he's down at a bar when this older woman begins to verbally attack him. She says, "You've got no right to snivel about your little war. World War II was a real war. Were you even alive then? I lost a brother in World War II." I tried to ignore her. She was only a local character. But Roger had had enough. He looked at her calmly, coldly, and said, "Have you ever had to kill anyone?" "Well, no," she answered belligerently. then what right have you got to tell me anything? There was a long, painful silence throughout the hall, as would occur in a home where a guest had just witnessed an embarrassing family argument. Then I asked quietly, "Roger, when you just got pushed now, you came back with the fact that you had to kill in Vietnam. Was that the worst of it for you?" "Yeah, that's half of it." I waited for a very long time, but he didn't go on. He only stared into his beer. Finally, I had to ask, what was the other half? The other half was that when we got home, nobody understood.